Hello, class. Imagine you are a freshman in high school. You just got out of fourth period and you are headed to the cafeteria to enjoy some lunch with your friends. As you sit down at a table after grabbing some food, you hear some arguing a few tables down. Suddenly, you hear a sound nobody wants to hear: a gunshot. You see people running and screaming, but one thing you don't see is an officer coming to defuse the dangerous situation. Your school happens to be one of the 56% of schools in 2016 without a trained school resource officer. When I was in high school a few years ago, I always felt safe knowing we had an officer on hand in case of drastic situations like this. Today, we are going to talk about why every school should always have a trained resource officer on hand. Between the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in 2012 up to 2018, a group known as Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund has found 405 incidents of gunfire on school grounds. Now, only 1% of these incidents are mass shootings, such as Sandy Hook or Columbine. However, any gunfire on school grounds creates a need for someone to protect the kids. You might ask, well, why don't we just give guns to the teachers or staff? Giving guns to school staff only makes things worse. They do not have the experience to deal with a real threat when it really matters. Also, putting a gun on someone who is so comfortable with kids is a bad idea. It takes one moment of not paying attention for someone to grab the gun off a teacher or administrator. If a school has a resource officer instead, the officer can focus on the safety of students and staff all the time. It might sound like I just want to put an armed guy in a school. So next, let me clarify what I mean by school resource officer. A school resource officer should be an official police officer who underwent extra training to deal with kids at school. I recently saw a video on the news about a school resource officer dealing with a teen girl with learning disabilities. The girl took more milk cartons than she was allowed and was ignoring school staff. The officer proceeded to push her to the ground and attempt to arrest her. She was screaming, and school staff were even telling the officer to let go of her. I give the staff props for calling on the officer to deal with a situation like this. However, this is an example of an officer that did not have proper training to deal with kids in a school setting. School resource officers need training that shows them the difference from dealing with kids rather than dealing with your average bad guy on the street. Next thing you might ask is, does this mean the officer should be called into a classroom every time Timmy gets caught putting some gum under his desk? No, not at all. The officer's role in the school is to pick up any incidents that the teachers just shouldn't handle. Things like fights, drugs, weapons, and maybe stolen items, such as the situation in the video. Also, a teacher should never have to touch a kid. The extreme case where a kid might have to be manhandled out of a classroom should be done by a trained officer. This way it is legally safer for the school and physically safer for the kid and the teacher. Now, to recap, if every school had a trained resource officer present, the schools would be safer for students and staff alike. We like to think teachers can handle anything at school, but there's just some stuff that takes someone official who has received extra training. Lastly, I'd like you to imagine one more thing for me. You are a freshman again. Same gunshot was heard as you imagined earlier. However, this time you see a school resource officer rushing over to investigate. That's a bit better this time. Thank you.